Delegates, we've talked a great deal about the Kirwan Commission today and the repercussions that decisions stemming from the Commission's work will have on our students, our profession, and our schools. The Kirwan Commission will leave an incredible legacy on our public education system that will be felt by a generation of students, educators, and Marylanders. That's why I'm so glad the namesake of the Commission, who himself has already left a pretty incredible legacy to the state of education in Maryland, is joining us here today to hear from educators, from you, about what our students and profession need. Before chairing this commission, Brit Kirwan served as Chancellor of the University System of Maryland from 2002 through 2015. Prior to that, he served as President of the University of Maryland College Park and of Ohio State University. If I went through all of the local, state, and federal boards he served on and the many honors and recognitions that he's received at each of those levels, well, we'd be here till midnight. Suffice it to say that when the Baltimore Sun inducted Brit into their Hall of Fame for Business and Civic Hall of Fame earlier this year, it called him nothing less than a national treasure. Very few people would be up to the task of leading a commission as complicated and consequential as this one, but Brit is one of them. I truly appreciate the hard work and the commitment he has to making a commission success, and also appreciate his being so generous with his time as to join all of us here today. Delegates, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Brit Kirwan.
Wow, thank you very much. What a great introduction. And Betty, I just want to say how appreciative all of us are who care about education for your extraordinary leadership of SMEA over the past 6 years. Yeah. So it's just been phenomenal. And I want to, of course, wish Sharon Boost, Cheryl Boast, yes. Cheryl, she's got a tough act to follow, but I think she's up to the challenge. But you leave a fabulous legacy. Thank you. What a pleasure to be here today, and I again want to thank you for that wonderful introduction. I consider this a great opportunity for me because the commission that I happen to chair is approaching the time when it needs to issue a report. We're right at the stage where we're beginning to formulate our recommendations, but we haven't written them into stone yet. So I'm hoping that today I'm going to get some good insights and feedback from you. But I just want to start by saying what a thrill it is to be in a room full of educators. I have spent 53 years in education, believe it or not, and many of those as a classroom teacher. And, I just have such great admiration and appreciation for what you do, and for those in the room who support the work of the classroom teachers. As I think back over my life, I don't think there's anything that has given me greater personal fulfillment than being in front of some young person when suddenly something they didn't understand, they get. That light bulb goes on. I get goosebumps thinking about it. And that's the gift that you give to the children of Maryland, and for that we're also very, very appreciative. I plan to today spend a brief amount of time talking about the Commission, where we've been, where we are, and where we hope to go. But I'm going to keep those comments relatively brief and then I want to be able to respond to questions that you have and hear suggestions that you want to offer that we can take back to that I can take back along with David, a fellow commissioner, to the next commission meeting. So let's get started, assuming this will work. Yes. So the commission is the Maryland Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education. It's a 25-member commission, and it was created in 2016 by the governor and the General Assembly. And of course, you know how it is when the General Assembly passes a piece of legislation. The description of the commission goes on and on and on for pages with lots of whereases. But when you distill it all down, the commission is supposed to do two things. One is to review the current funding formula that came out of the Thornton Commission, and to make whatever recommendations we feel that should be made to that formula to bring it up to date. The second thing we're supposed to do, and I find this a most exciting part of our charge, is to develop policies and strategies for Maryland schools that will enable the children of Maryland to perform at the level of children in the best performing school systems in the world. That's a daunting task, but that's what we've been asked to do. Now, the commission is very broadly representative. It has all of the major constituencies that are directly involved with education are included in on the commission. And as I mentioned, MSEA is represented by David. I also want to acknowledge his very important role on the commission, the important voice he has been in making certain that the commission understands the needs of the teachers and the support staff in K through 12 education. But I also want to recognize Sean Johnson and Steve Hershkowitz. They've come to every meeting, and quite frankly, I've had the opportunity to meet with David and Sean and Stephen in between meetings to just sort of talk through issues and to try to ensure that we stay aligned in the work of the commission. Now, I've been very impressed by David and Sean, but I have great expectations for Stephen because he is a graduate of the University of Maryland, and we wouldn't expect anything less than an outstanding performance from him. So the commission, to do its work, we've used two consultants. One on the finance side, and it's this firm, abbreviated APA. They're actually the firm that was used when the Thornton Commission work was done. So they've come back. They actually got started before the commission did. They were under a contract with the state, so they've given us a report, and the commission is going through that report to see what modifications we will want to make in it. On the policy side, we have been very fortunate to have working with us the National Center on Education and the Economy, NCEE. Now, NCEE it's located in Washington, D.C., and what they do is they study high-performing school systems, not just in the United States, but around the world. And in their work, they have developed what they call the 9 building blocks. Each school system is different when you look around the world or across the United States, but they've tried to distill from the performance of these various school systems what are the sort of the essential common elements that make them so successful. And so they have these 9 building blocks, and I've listed several of them on the 5 of them there on the screen. High quality early childhood education, more resources for at-risk students, coherent, rigorous instructional systems, college and career pathways aligned with higher ed and industry standards, and most importantly, an abundant supply of highly qualified teachers and principals. Now, incidentally, if you have insomnia and you want to get over it, you can go to our website, and there you will find every word, every piece of paper, everything that's ever been done at the Commission is right there for you to go through, and you can see what the other building blocks are. So, how are we going about this? So, we have these 9 building blocks, and we've identified some high-performing systems for our outside the country: Finland, Ontario, Shanghai, Singapore, and 3 states in the U.S., Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New Hampshire. And so what we've been doing is a gap analysis, looking at the 9 building blocks, seeing where Maryland is with each of the 9 building blocks, and determining how we differ from these 7 other school systems. And that will sort of inform and be the basis of our report. Now, what have we learned in our work today? Well, we've learned that Maryland ranks 11th in per student expenditures on K through 12 education. I actually thought going in it was higher. So 11th isn't terrible, but it shows we have room to spend more, and we should. Maryland is in the middle of the pack in terms of NAEP scores. This is something you probably are aware of. Maryland, the third bullet, is one that has caused a lot of consternation on the Commission, and I think has caught everybody by surprise, even some of the staff there in Annapolis, that Maryland spends 5% less on schools serving poor students than on schools serving wealthy communities. That's just not acceptable. And something must be done about that. In fact, we rank very low in the country. We're the 9th most regressive. That means there are 40 states that do a better job of funding needs for challenged students and particularly low-income students. And then this last bullet, Maryland has the nation's highest median household income. And again, we're the 11th in terms of spending. So as I say, we definitely have room to increase the investment in education. One other slide I wanted to, here's another slide that has gotten the attention of the Commission. This isn't about Maryland, it's about the United States. In fact, Maryland does not participate in the PISA exams. Several other states do. I think some students in Maryland are sampled. But it shows that the U.S. has a way to go in terms of the performance of our students in comparison to the rest of the world. And I think an alarming feature of this particular slide is that the performance of U.S. students is overall declining in the PISA exams. Now, the Commission, as I say, is moving towards the end of its work, and we are beginning to reach areas of consensus. And I'd just like to, as I come to a close, just like to sort of identify some of the areas of consensus. The first is that there is, I think everyone agrees, we must expand and improve early childhood education in the state of Maryland. When you look at these other countries, they are way ahead of us in providing opportunities for early childhood education. So where the Commission is at the moment is that we should make available full-day, make accessible full-day preschool for all 4-year-olds, free for low-income 4-year-olds, perhaps a sliding scale of costs in the upper ranks of income, but every low-income 4-year-old should have access to a high-quality early childhood, and full-day preschool for all low-income 3-year-olds in the state. So that's sort of where our head is on the early childhood. We are convinced that we've got to do a better job of preparing and supporting the teachers in Maryland. And that includes enhancing the teacher profession with better compensation, of course. But we also know that one of the challenges you face are the circumstances that you find in trying to do your jobs in the school. So we need better working conditions in the classroom. And incidentally, that's something that was driven home to us about these other high-performing countries, that they have better induction process for new teachers. They allow more time for teachers to do planning and preparing and collaboration, and less time in the classroom. And this is very important. I mean, the Commission understands this, so this will definitely be part of our recommendations. And also, the Commission is very interested in a recommendation that would allow for a career lattice so that good teachers could advance in compensation without having to leave the classroom and go into administration. So we want to make it possible to keep good teachers in the classroom, and that's what happens in these other countries. So really, I think one of the most areas is getting the most attention, rightly so, in the Commission work, is this whole area of enhancing the teaching profession, both for the classroom teachers and those that support those in the classroom. Develop a rigorous career and technical education pathway. I think that's an idea that is really beginning to catch on, and there are good examples in the state of Maryland to build upon. I had the privilege of visiting Western Tech in Baltimore County, and what an exceptional career and technical education school that is. We also are considering a recommendation that would move the college and career readiness determination from the 11th grade, where it's based on a 4 or 5 on the 11th grade PARCC, back to the 10th grade. And the thinking is this, that with the determination being made based on the 11th grade, there's not enough time to help those young people that need a little more time to get up to standard. But if we do this in the 10th grade, then we've got 2 years to help them catch up. So this is an idea that also has some real currency with the Commission. We have to address the funding equity issue. This will be a big issue. Much more funding invested in schools serving concentrations of poverty. And then tie the increased funding to fiscal accountability. What I mean by that is that there needs to be, and as the money comes in to the system, there needs to be some assurance that the money is being spent to implement the recommendations and not going for other purposes. So and quite frankly, our sense is the state doesn't have an appetite for more money if there isn't fiscal accountability, so that when money is intended for low-income schools, it goes to those schools. Now, of course, this will get the issue of the local control versus higher authority will have to come into play. We believe in local control, but there has to be this fiscal accountability with regard to the recommendations. My final thought is, and then we'll turn to the questions. First of all, I have been enormously impressed with the Commission members. As I said, they each represent some constituency, but they have checked those constituencies to a certain extent at the door. They're all willing to come together make their case, but then try to find common ground. That is so important. So I am confident this commission is going to produce a really meaningful report. But will the state have the resolve to implement these recommendations? That's the challenge. Now, I want to mention Massachusetts as I close. Massachusetts is the one state in the union that performs at the level of the highest performing countries. And Massachusetts got there in large part because of a significant investment in the teaching profession. And that is a big takeaway from us. Massachusetts ranks in the top 5 and compared to the rest of the countries on the PISA exam. So, I think the members of the commission feel this is a really critical moment for the state of Maryland. We can just continue on making incremental changes and hope we get a different result, or we can be bold and make these kinds of investments on research-based proven strategies and create a magnificent future for the children of Maryland. So thank you very much for listening to me talk about the commission. And now I'm ready to hear from your members.
Delegates, now Dr. Kirwan is going to take questions and comments for about 30 minutes. I see you've already formed 2 lines at the microphone, so if you want to speak, you can get in line. I'm going to ask you to please try to get out your comment or question in about 90 seconds. That way we'll get more comments and questions in. And I'll alternate starting with microphone 1 and going back and forth to microphone 2. Microphone 1.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kirwan, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
My name is Donna Christie. I'm a school psychologist in Prince George's County, and I am also the 2017 Maryland School Psychologist of the Year. But my current workload includes attempting to meet the needs of 2,642 students. The industry standard for my job is a ratio of 1 psychologist for every 500 to 700 students. And I'm not alone in this place. Psychologists all over this state and even all over the country are having this same issue. It means that we can't possibly provide the interventions or supports that every student who needs our help can get it. Our ability to prevent everything from suicide to helping students be more motivated is significantly impaired. Every single week, I meet in IEP meetings with parents who are crying for my help. And I leave work frustrated that I am unable to commit to meeting with their child on a regular basis to help with those issues. I have a 5th grader right now who last year...
Donna, can you get to your question or comment?
Yes, sorry. Will the commission help us shine the spotlight on the mental health needs of our students? It is an absolute necessity. We need you to urge the legislature to ensure industry standards, staffing levels for mental health professionals in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Dr. Kirwan, thank you for being here. My name is Gary Brennan. I'm a social studies teacher, high school in Frederick County. The issue I want to talk about relates a little to the last speaker. It's about class size. When the original Thornton Commission funding came out, that was used partially to hire more staff. But when the economy went in the toilet in 2008, 9, and 10, one way schools balanced the budget was increasing class size, increasing the number of students we see. We have not made up for that deficit yet. And for example, you are in a room with a lot of great educators, but I guarantee you we're even better educators when we have class sizes that are reasonable. I have classes 43, 44 students in a social studies class. 35 is my average class size. I can identify their strengths quicker. I can find their weaknesses better when I have the time to get to know each student and really assess their work, and I feel I'm always behind the 8 ball doing that. So I'm just asking if the commission is open to looking at class size, increasing formulas, particularly for low-income schools, so we can increase the staff-to-student ratio. And I don't care what some of the neo-theorists say about class size. It makes a huge difference to students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone 1.
Thank you. My name's Robert Hall, also from Prince George's County, and I really appreciate you listening to me the other day at your hearing, because I know you're all tired late in the afternoon, so I really want to appreciate you listening to me when I talked about trauma-informed education at your hearing. So I'm really glad you're talking about policy developments and innovative strategies, because I think that in addition to all the other stuff, Maryland is way behind on its development of innovative strategies to respond to at-risk or challenging situations. Across the country, many states are moving to trauma-informed education, and I think one of the things you missed about Massachusetts, it is really the home of trauma-informed education. They have an extensive program in virtually every school. So I think that's another reason why they're so incredibly successful. So my only thing is I think that the funding, in addition to the other things you mentioned, should be tied to innovative, creative interventions, not just about equity. We've been doing a lot of funding issues that don't necessarily tie themselves to different ways of approaching the problems. I know in PG County, we keep throwing money at programs that have been absolutely ineffective to change the achievement gap, discipline rates, graduation rates, and we just were at a meeting the other day, and all they said is let's continue to fund and double down on things that absolutely have never worked and never have a chance to work. So hopefully you'll be also pursuing, what's going on in these places that you identified that are innovative and progressive interventions, and hopefully we'll be pushing those out. The last thing I want to say is it seems, in addition to the other things that have been cut, the professional development opportunities for a lot of our individuals have just been decimated. So I hopefully, in addition to these other things, there's also a push to promote member-supported professional development that targets new and innovative ways of solving these problems.
Dr. Kirwan, would you like to respond to any of this?
Thank you for those comments, and I think they're right on target, because part of the reason for giving teachers more time is that they can collaborate, they can work in teams, they can bring in new strategies, they can experiment and see what works and what doesn't work. And so the recommendations you're making are really spot on in terms of what needs to be happening to give teachers more time to bring best practices in the classroom. When there's no time set aside for the kind of thinking that you're describing, it's just not possible to do. So I appreciate those comments very much, and they're very well aligned with the way we've been thinking on the Commission.
I appreciate you giving us all a lot more hope for what's going to happen next.
Thank you. Microphone 2. Linda?
Yes. Dr. Kirwan, thank you for listening to us. I'm a paraeducator, Linda Furman from Howard County, and we're looking at paraeducators and caseloads. We seek to make instruction personalized to every student and the needs and overcome growing class sizes. Paraeducators have become more and more vital to the effectiveness of our teaching and learning in schools. They are especially important with special education students and in elementary classrooms. We can't just focus on teachers when we increase staff in school. We need more paraeducators if we're going to raise proficiency. Please, please, please include policy and funding recommendations to increase the number of paraeducators in Maryland schools? Thank you.
Thank you.
You have mentioned an item that's near and dear to my heart because my dear wife was a paraeducator for 10 years in the Montgomery County schools.
Thank you.
Microphone 1.
Dr. Kirwan,
Yes.
I'm Sean Heil from Charles County, Maryland. I, too, would also like to thank you for being so receptive to what we're saying so late in the game. So thank you for taking the time to come to us today. What I want to address is student misbehavior. Student misbehavior is growing more and more out of control. And I don't think we can return to the days of mass suspensions, expulsions, and other forms of punitive discipline. But without an alternative, many of our educators are unsupported in managing classrooms, maintaining a positive school climate, and ensuring students and staff safety. I'm asking you to please, please, please include a recommendation to invest heavily in the staff and professional development necessary to scale up necessary positive interventions like restorative practices and trauma-informed instruction. Because such preventions and interventions are necessary to do our jobs and will help us do what's best for kids, because there's a lot of things out there right now that we need some help with. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Kirwan.
you. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Garrett, and I'm a special education teacher from Cecil County. My question to you today pertains to planning time. Teachers want to be treated as professionals, but it's hard when we never have any time to collaborate with colleagues, rewrite lesson plans, or spend time analyzing the mountains of data the standardized tests produce, let alone reviewing the latest research on how to make progress with a challenging student. Any moment we can grab of planning time usually gets lost in the urgency needs of the day, making sure a hungry student gets food or following up with a parent. My question to you today, sir, will the Commission make hiring more instructional staff a priority so we can all get more planning time and do a better job for our students?
Thank you very much. I was emphasizing a little earlier the importance of giving more time to teachers and professionals in the schools so they can do just exactly the sort of thing that you're describing. So I think you can count on that being included in the recommendations coming out of the Commission. But thank you for your comments. Yes.
Thank you.
Microphone 1.
Hi, my name is Greg Collins. I am a 27-year special education teacher in Baltimore County. And in this 27 years, I am starting to grow tired of feeling the burden of stopping generational poverty, especially concentrated poverty, without having any of the resources or the structures in a way that allow our students who simply need these needed health and nutritional and other non-academic supports to meet with success. Will you please urge the Commission to make a specific recommendation that the state funding formula include funding for every high poverty school to become a community school with a community school coordinator?
Thank you. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I had the privilege of visiting 2 community schools, and they were both in Baltimore City, and came away greatly impressed by the impact that they can have on the children in those schools. So very much in favor, support. I think the Commission supports a significant expansion of the community school concept.
Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 2. Hi, Rachel.
Hi. Good afternoon, Dr. Kirwan. My name is Rachel McCusker. I'm a vocal music teacher in the Carroll County Public Schools and was the 2015 Carroll County Teacher of the Year. I'd like to take just a moment of your time to talk to you about the need for educator autonomy. Over the last couple of decades, more and more control has been taken away from teachers. In fact, Maryland ranks 49th in the country in teacher autonomy because we have seen nothing but top-down mandate after top-down mandate. Administration, district leadership, and politicians often do not show respect for the work what they do, nor trust us to be the professionals that we're trained to be. First, the updated funding formulas need to account for these unfunded top-down mandates and finally fund them. Then, the policy proposals you present must help us to improve classroom autonomy. That could look like staffing for planning time or new programs to support social and emotional learning. But we need more support so we can be the best educators in the world and provide a world-class education for our Maryland children. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. That's one of the things that has really come through in our work on the commission is the level of autonomy in the classroom in these high-performing school systems. That the teachers are professionals. There is a trust in that the teachers will deliver a good quality of education, and so very much in line with the things we've been thinking about on the commission.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you for your time today.
Microphone 1.
Good afternoon. Sorry.
Good
Dr.
afternoon.
Kirwan,
How are you?
I'm well. My name is Fernetta Carson, and I'm from the St. Mary's County Public School System. All right. I am a proud ESP member. My question actually is regarding ESP salaries. Many of our education support professionals, our bus drivers, our food service workers, our paraeducators do not make a living wage. It's immoral, the support that we give to the school system, and we're not rewarded as such. And that, to me, that is just immoral. And with that, employees of our schools, I feel, should and are deserving of a guaranteed living wage. Do you agree? I'm sure you do, as you stated. Your wife was a paraeducator, so with that, my question is, can you make sure that when the commission talks, that you will bring this to the table, the talks of the educational support salaries?
Absolutely. The investment in teachers and support staff salary is, a paramount issue for the commission. We've looked at the benchmarks, and Maryland doesn't fare well in comparison to high-performing states in compensation. So that's an issue that has to be addressed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Good afternoon. Richard Benfer from Anne Arundel. Salaries are a huge issue. Also, because our educators are behind on steps. We're promised these steps year after year.
Behind on what?
Steps, like...
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And there has to be a way for us to have funding to, number one, make sure people are getting their longevity step and catching up folks who are behind. In Anne Arundel, we have folks 5 to 8 years behind on their experience and their steps. And I know there are other counties sitting here in the same situation. So if we can address that and make sure it's in there in some way to ensure that educators get what they're promised at the bargaining table, that's going to be a huge success and bring our morale up and let us focus on kids instead of worrying about how I'm going to pay my electric bill.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kirwan. My name is Ashley Anderson-Langer, and I'm from Kent County, and I'm a second grade teacher. Used to be at Wharton Elementary School, which was recently consolidated, so we've gone from 7 schools to 5. So I'm just taking kind of a selfish moment for our county to advocate that there's a lot of issues statewide, but this commission could be survival for our county. Our kids have gone through school closure. We had a traumatic bus situation at the beginning of the school year with just trying to cut money and cut money and cut money. And I hope that the state takes time to realize that even though it appears on paper that we have a lot of wealth in our county, that is not the picture of our day-to-day situation and the students and parents and teachers who are working in our school system. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no doubt that we have to rethink the funding formula in large part for the very reason you're mentioning. And so that's on the agenda for the commission. But thank you for those comments.
Thank you. Microphone 2, which one of you is speaking?
She's taking a nap currently,
Oh, okay.
so I'm going to speak on her behalf.
Hi, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kirwan. I'm Matthew Vaughn Smith, and I am a reading specialist in the Great Howard County. Many of our educators cannot afford to live in the county where they work. I personally live in Baltimore City, and my family is growing, as you can see. It drives many people out of the county or out of the profession. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of us are forced to become administrators or move up because we just can't afford to live there. What is the commission going to do to make sure teachers can afford to raise their families in the county where they work without jumping to another higher paying profession?
Well, as I indicated earlier, teacher compensation is very much an item under consideration with the commission. And one of as we think about elevating the profession to give more autonomy in the classroom and to set high expectations for performance of our teachers, we do need to address the compensation issue. And one thought that we've been exploring on the commission is that we should benchmark teacher salaries against other professions with comparable levels of education.
Wow.
So that's the sort of thing we are thinking about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kirwan.
Hi.
My name is Allie Carter. I'm a vocal music teacher from Baltimore County. Thanks. I have another vocal music teacher behind me, it seems. I'm here regarding class sizes, as I've heard a couple people say before. Personally, I have 12 classes. My average class size is 38. Last year, the largest class size our school saw was 52 to one teacher. And looking around at the faces in this room, I can see that we're not the exception. I wanted to state to you, based on what my students have told me, that it's more than just adding another chair to the room. It's more than just being told that a good teacher can handle 60 kids in a classroom. It's meeting IEP and 504 requirements, which are legal contracts. It's providing services to students with trauma. It's providing restorative justice and restorative classroom environment to our students. It's getting to know our students and getting them to invest in what we're teaching them and care to do the work. It's so much more than just another chair in the classroom. So I would like to know what the commission is planning to do to support a safe and equitable student-to-teacher ratio.
We haven't come up with any particular formula at this stage, but I must say I am surprised. Several people have mentioned this today. I was not aware that the 40 students in a classroom is more common around the state, based on what I've heard today, than I would have thought. And I think we would all agree that's just not a reasonable class size.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have about 5 more minutes, so please be succinct. Microphone 2.
Good afternoon. I'm Lauren Moskowitz. I teach special ed in Montgomery County, but before that I was an early childhood educator for 12 years. My issue that I'm bringing to you is that when Thornton first came out, and it made this wonderful promise to our most needy students that pre-K would be possible and every student who was eligible would get a seat, but they didn't fund more teachers or classes. So in Montgomery County, the average pre-K class has 23 to 25 4-year-olds with one para who may or may not have any early childhood background. So while we fully support early childhood and universal pre-K, we only support it if it's going to be funded and done right.
I hear you, and I would say that as I've gone around the state talking about the commission and its work and areas of consensus, the early childhood issue seems universally endorsed. I think we are ready, we are poised in Maryland to make a huge step and adequately funded step on early childhood education. That would be, I think, a very significant outcome of this work, and I am personally deeply committed to seeing that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Johnson. I'm from Anne Arundel County, and I'm a music teacher. I teach the elementary general music. I'm kind of piggybacking on with what the other speaker said. When I get the children into my classroom, I have kindergartners, full-day kindergartners. They are bone tired. They do not have what it takes mentally, physically, to really get into what I'm doing. And I've seen that with pre-K children when I was doing full-day pre-K, when they introduced that. So my issue is, if we're going to be doing full-day 3-year-olds and full-day pre-K and K, please, I beg you, as a parent, grandmother, and former daycare provider, and now teacher, please take into consideration that these children are children. They're babies. Their brains are sponges, but they are not little robots. Please do not push them to the point where they're going to hate school. That is my concern. I mean, it gives me chills just to talk about it, Doctor.
Thank you.
I hear you.
We have time for maybe one more question. Microphone 2.
Doug Prouty, Montgomery County. Thank you for coming, Dr. Kirwan. I'll be brief because you've already spoken about
Speak
this.
in, Doug.
You talked about the career lattice and other opportunities for teachers. I just wanted to emphasize to you that we need first to take care of our most basic financial needs for all of our teachers, and then work on providing more professional opportunities across the board. Unfortunately, programs like the Career Lattice are often the first thing on the cutting block. So we need to guarantee folks that they have the most basic level first, then start thinking about increased opportunities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Kirwan, do you want to say anything else?
Yes, first of all, I'm sorry we're out of time because I have benefited. Are we at the end? Oh, we're at the end. Okay. So I will hang around for a bit out in the hall, so if people want to come up and speak to me, I'll be glad to spend a little time with you, those who didn't get to ask a question. I guess I just want to end on 2 points. One is there are lots of interests that don't always align when you think about K through 12 education. And we're going to, at the end of the day, if we're going to be able to get a plan that is supported across the state, we're going to have what one might call a grand bargain. We've got to be sensitive to the most important needs of the various groups, but at the end of the day, we can't do everything that everybody wants. We've got to have a plan that is going to make a difference for the young people of the state of Maryland, but in order for it to be implemented, it's got to have a broad base of support. So we all need to keep that in mind. The second point I want to make is that we have no chance of implementing this report, in my opinion, without MSEA's support. You are so critical to this effort. And so I just want to assure you that, first of all, how important David's voice is on the commission, but secondly, the opportunity to work with MSEA and other groups to ensure that we fully understand what is most important to you and that we can be responsive to that in the report. Again, I want to thank you for allowing me time on your program, for the wonderful points that were made today, and I guess I'll head out the door on the other side if anybody wants to continue talking. Thank you very much.
Delegates, please join me in thanking Dr. Kirwan for his time, his insight, and his leadership.